Hi there, this is once again Campbell librarian Steve Bonneman here to talk about articles that you will be using when you find them in English 102 for literary criticism. In this case, we're looking at an article that is in the genre of comparative literature. What that means is that they're going to look at one source, one story, and compare it to another story. Sometimes that story will be one that you know fairly well, or an author you know fairly well. In this case, they're comparing Poe and Hemingway. But in some cases, it will be comparing Poe and an author that may be more obscure or more underrepresented. And that's okay too. The thing we want you to know here is that it's absolutely fine to use the parts that are about your story, the Cask of Amontillado by Poe in this case, even if you aren't doing anything with that other Hemingway story. The good news is the author will probably do an analysis of both pieces. We can see that here. Check first to see if your story is going to play a major role or a minor role, and in this case they're talking about a close reading of Poe's The Cask of Amontillado, so that will help you. Further, we can look at some of the notes I've made further down here. They may have kind of 1 point for one author and 1 point for the other. And in this case, the author is noting that Poe omits hidden elements in the story and leaves gaps for readers to fill. That's kind of the main idea of this piece about Poe, kind of arguing that Poe doesn't tell you everything about the motives of the people in the story, so you have to fill in the gaps yourself. Look for what they're primarily saying about your story, because that will help you understand better what you might get out of this article. You can try to find kind of areas of that. And you can see again there they talk about omission, that's the main thread, and they go back and forth between talking about Poe and Hemingway, so you can find those things as you go through. Even if you're not writing about omission, though, because this article is fairly long, they might talk about other things. Here's a comparison of how the two characters are characterized. That might be a useful piece for you, even though you're not writing about the main idea of this article. The good news is that when articles are longer, like this one, you might be able to find more. I've just given you an excerpt here, but that's kind of the idea. So the main point with articles that compare two sources, one of which is your story and one of which isn't, you can still use these anyway, but you're really kind of ignoring or setting aside the pieces about the other story unless those are highly, highly helpful to you in some way. Happy researching.